So for today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be reviewing something you did last year back in Algebra 2, which was synthetic and long division. To start, remember when you're dividing polynomials, long division works all the time versus synthetic is a little bit of a shortcut, but it does not work all the time. So let's just start with a basic long division problem involving numbers. Suppose we want to take 693 and divide it by 3. So we're going to put 3 outside of our division sign. The 693 goes under. So the way we start is we always work with the very first number or the very first term when we get the polynomials that's underneath. And the question you want to ask yourself, what is 6 divided by 3? And that's going to be a 2. So your first step is to divide. Then after you find that 6 divided by 3 is 2, you're then going to multiply 2 times 3 on the outside. And 2 times 3 is 6. So we're going to place that underneath the 6 that was underneath our division sign. So remember, our first step was to divide, then we multiplied. Now we're going to subtract. And 6 minus 6 is 0, and then you bring down the next numbers. I like to bring down all my numbers. Some of you may like to just bring down one at a time. So then you're going to repeat the process again. Remember, then you subtract and you bring down. So now we're going to repeat this process again. Again, I'm going to always take my 3, divide it into the first number. So 9 divided by 3 is 3. So I'm going to place 3 up on top of my division sign. So there's my division. Next, I'm going to multiply. 3 times 3 is 9. So I'm going to then subtract. 9 minus 9 is 0. And then again, I'm going to bring down the 3. Repeat, you keep going until you can no longer take this number and divide it in evenly. Well, 3 divided by 3 gives me 1. So I'm going to place a 1 at the top. Repeat my process again. 1 times 3 is 3. Then I'm going to subtract. And 3 minus 3 is 0. So I have no remainder. So my answer would be 231. The process is exactly the same even when you're dealing with polynomials. So suppose I have 6x to the third plus 9x squared plus 3x. I want to divide it by 3x. Again, the 3x goes on the outside. The 6x to the third plus 9x squared plus 3x goes underneath my division sign. I'm always going to take my first term here. So I'm going to take 6x to the third and I'm going to divide it by a 3x. So when I take 6x to the third and divide it by a 3x, that's going to give me a 2x squared. So that's what's going to go at the very top. So there's my division. Next, I'm going to multiply. 2x squared times 3x is a 6x to the third. So then I'm going to subtract, and that's going to cancel. Then I'm going to bring down. So there's my 9x squared plus 3x. So again, I repeat the process again. You're always working with that first term. So I have to take 9x squared and divide it by a 3x. 9x squared divided by a 3x is a 3x. So that's going to go, again, you separate them by addition signs, so plus 3x. Repeat your process again. I divided. 3x times 3x is a 9x squared. So next I'm going to subtract. And 9x squared minus 9x squared gives me 0. I'm going to bring down my 3x. After I bring down, I repeat the process again. So I have to take 3x and divide it into 3x, which is just going to give me 1. Again, separated by addition signs, that's what plus 1. 1 times 3x is a 3x. Again, I'm just going to subtract, and that's a 0. So there is no remainder, so my answer would just be 2x squared plus 3x plus 1. Remember, the first step in long division, you can call this a family plan. You divide. After you divide, you're going to multiply. After you multiply, you're going to subtract. And then you're going to bring down remaining terms. So those are the steps we follow when we're doing long division. So now even if you have more than one term on the outside of the division sign, you still always work just with the first term. So again, we're going to just take x squared and we're going to divide it by the first term on the outside, which is x. So x squared divided by x is just going to give me an x. So I'm going to write that at the top. Now, the difference between the other two examples is because you have the two terms, you need to multiply x by both terms on the outside, so you have to apply that distributive property. So x times x is x squared, and keep your like terms lined up. X times 7 is a 7x. And remember, you're going to subtract, so distribute the subtraction sign all the way across. X squared minus x squared cancels. 9x minus 7x is a 2x. And again, I like to bring down everything, so it's going to be plus 14. I'm going to repeat the process again. Always still working with the first term on the outside. Always working with the first term when you have to repeat the division process again. So I'm going to take 2x and divide it by x. And 2x divided by x is going to give me a plus 2 at the top. Again, distribute the 2 to each term on the outside. 2 times x is a 2x. 2 times 7 is 14. And then I'm going to subtract, so I'm going to distribute the subtraction sign all the way across. The 2x's goes to 0, 14 minus 14 goes to 0. So there is no remainder. So my answer is just x plus 2. So taking a look at the next example. Again, you always work with the first term on the outside and the first term that's underneath the division sign to get started. So I have to take x to the third and divide it by an x, and that's going to give me an x squared. You need to distribute the x squared to each term on the outside, so x squared times x is x to the third. X squared times negative 1 is a minus x squared. Now you're subtracting, so you have to distribute the subtraction sign. So this is a minus. This minus and negative is going to become a positive. So x to the third minus x to the third cancels. Negative x squared plus x squared cancels. So I need to bring down my 2x, and I need to bring down, be careful, there's a subtraction sign here, so that's a minus 2. So repeat the process again. You always work with the very first term. So I have to take 2x and divide it by x, and that's going to give me a 2. So I'll write a plus 2 at the top. Distribute the 2 to the x and the 2 to the minus 1. 2 times x is 2x. 2 times negative 1 is a minus 2. Again, you're subtracting, so we have to distribute the subtraction sign all the way across. So this becomes a minus 2x. Minus a negative 2 is going to change that into a positive. 2x minus 2x cancels, negative 2 plus 2 cancels, so my remainder is 0. So my answer is just x squared plus 2. So taking a look at another example, again, you're still always working with the first term. I'm going to take that 2x to the third divided by an x, which gives me a 2x squared. Now notice what happens underneath. This polynomial is not written in standard form. So what I'm going to do before I get started is rewrite this so that all of your exponents for x are in descending order. So 2x to the third, notice I have to put my plus x squared next, minus 4x plus 2. You always want to make sure you have your polynomials written in standard form. So 2x to the third divided by my x is my 2x squared. Multiply 2x squared times x is 2x to the third. 2x squared times negative 1 is a minus 2x squared. Remember, we have to subtract, so I'm going to distribute the subtraction sign. So that's going to go to 0. Minus a negative becomes a positive. X squared plus 2x squared is a 3x squared. Bring down my minus 4x, bring down my plus 2. Repeat the process again. Always work with that first term. 3x squared divided by x. 3x squared divided by x is a plus 3x that I write at the top. Multiply 3x times x, that's a 3x squared. 3x times negative 1 is a minus 3x. Again, I need to subtract, so that's going to become a minus. Minus a negative becomes a positive. 3x squared minus 3x squared goes to 0. negative 4x plus 3x is a minus x. Bring down my plus 2. Again, always work with the first term. I have to take negative x, divide it by my first term outside my division sign, which is x, so that's going to give me a negative 1. Multiply negative 1. Negative 1 times x is minus x. Negative 1 times negative 1 is a plus 1. Again, you're subtracting, so minus a negative becomes a positive, and negative x plus x is 0. This becomes a negative 1. 2 minus 1 is a 1. So now notice this is going to be your remainder. So when you have a remainder, because I can't go any further because x will not divide into 1 evenly. If I tried to do 1 divided by x, this would be a fraction. So that's how I know I have a remainder. So my answer is going to be 2x squared plus 3x minus 1, what I have up here. So what you do with the remainder is you put a plus sign, you take your remainder, you're going to make a fraction over the divisor x minus 1. So that would be your answer when you have a remainder.